I'm Robi Botos. I make music, and you're listening to Talking Blues.
Robbie, so you come from a very musical family. It almost sounds like there's no choice but for you to become a musician, but I don't know if you feel that way. Your grandfather was a musician, your dad was a musician, your brothers are musicians. Tell me about how music came into your life.
Well, as you said, as long as we can go back in the family tree, as far as we know, everybody made music. On both sides, actually, both my dad's and my mom's side. Although my mom is not a musician, but her dad was an amazing cymbalom player, Hungarian Romani instrument. So Hungarian gypsy music is what ran in the family. And my dad picked up the drums, which was outrageous for the people and the music at the time, because it was very North American, you know.
Oh, so it's not part of the Romani music?
Not really, no. I mean, at least not in that part of the world. And so it would be, Hungarian gypsy music would be violin, viola, clarinet, a cymbalom, right. That's like a dulcimer. Almost every culture has their own version of it, you know. They hit it with mallets and then bass, string bass, usually, and a second violin. So it's very classical sounding. It's parts of classical orchestras in a way, and it's also very European sounding, very very heartfelt, very romantic music. Mostly. So the drums, and my dad being into more modern music, and I think a lot of like big rock records came out when he was a kid, and also like just all kinds of music, but jazz was also on his radar, and he just got into drums. He had a cousin who got into the electric guitar, so it was a little bit of a strange thing from where we come from, but jazz kind of entered Hungary at that time. And so I grew up. I have two brothers that play drums, and one of them plays bass, but we all kind of play several instruments.
Well, you started off on the drums, correct?
Yes. So like we had like bongos and drums at home, and the issue was that both my dad and my brother, my older brother, were practicing a lot. It was all drums, so there's only so much time in the day, and so I was very, very, very attracted to the drums. So a lot of times I would just watch them practice and just pick up things by that, just looking and listening. So that was extremely helpful. And then when I was 7, my dad had this vision that the three brothers would play together. He wanted us to make music. It's amazing that he actually wanted that music is a big part of the family. So he got an upright piano when I was 7, and just kind of gave me a couple bass, even though he's a drummer, but he had some basic knowledge on certain things on the piano and the sheet music. And so, I just kind of got right into the deep water. There's a piano, and then your brother is already playing the drums. Go do something,
And what would you have played at that point? I mean, as you learn at the age of 7, what were you playing on the piano?
I didn't take any lessons at that time. I was just experimenting with it. So many times alone, I would just sit there and I started I would say writing, because improvising basically. Mm-hmm. You come up with melodies, and I used to listen to the piano just with the sustain pedal down and just hit it and listen to how it changes the sound. I had a connection, a big connection. I mean, I don't usually talk about this, but I don't think that I could say that I love piano better than drums, because I'm a bit of a drum nerd as well. And I love playing it. I still do. And I actually recorded more on drums than played live. Because when I worked on certain soundtracks, or if they needed something that I was able to do from my studio, I would just play to it. But I had, it's a different way of expressing yourself. So, being able to play actual melodies and chords and harmonies really got me interested. So first I would just play random stuff that I liked. I kept it safe, 2 notes, let them ring.
Right.
But I feel like I was able to put my heart into it. Like I could just get something out of it that's very personal.
Very quickly.
Yeah. And I think it also had to do with just certain circumstances, like most kids have those questions and feelings when they're young, like trying to figure out life. And when you have music that early, it just helps you express all the things you don't understand yet.
I wonder, like when you're born into a family of musicians and music is all around you, like sometimes I wonder when we deal with the young kids from the Royal Conservatory, they're kind of not forced into music, but in a way, at 3 they're playing the violin, and you wonder at what point do they make that connection between musician and music, and I wonder if you just automatically have that when you come from an environment like you grew up in.
It's hard to say. I mean, I know people that never came from any, like nobody was a musician around them, and they just like right away they just like. But I think, I mean, I have enough students over the years to I can spot out when it's more about the parents. And I remember teaching kids who were like devastated. I'm like, you don't like this, do you? And the kid would be like, I really hate it. It's my parents who want me to, And he would just go and play PlayStation with my kid. He hated to sit at the piano. So, for me, the tricky part though is that kids have a lot of different things to do right now in 2024, because we're talking about the mid 80s or late 80s for me, like mid to late 80s. I mean, yes, we had like a tape cassette player, and but if I had like all those channels and YouTube and PS5s, I would still probably be a musician. But it's amazing what you compete with out of entertainment. And music is also, it could be challenging for kids just to get into it enough to learn it, to sit with it, because everything else they do is, you don't need to do anything. It's easy. It's just there.
Right. Do you remember when you connected with it, when it wasn't a challenge, or it was a challenge in a very positive way?
A challenge to connect with the instrument?
Yeah, or just music. Like, do you remember when you when you started playing the piano and listening to the sustain, did you immediately...
I think that was it.
That was it?
Like, just when I first started, and I remember these times when, thankfully, this piano was in a room on its own. And this was a pretty big European apartment. So I was able to just go back there, and it would be very quiet, like, mostly quiet.
Right.
And I think it was melodies that I tried. It was kind of like I tried to figure out something that I might sing, how to play that, just kind of that. I think, and that's probably the reason why I'm still, known as an improviser, known or like that's what I feel comfortable there, like I feel comfortable experimenting.
Right.
And so I think that's what got me. It's like, if I do this, it gives me that color, and then I can, it was just and I think it was the intimacy. It was also that was able to express things that you can't really say, or just stuff that's in the background, and you're not on. I mean, every kid, at certain age, you're just trying to figure things out. And depending on what happens around you, it can be challenging.
What was growing up in Hungary challenging?
In many ways. Like, for example, jazz wasn't something that you can easily get because it was a communist system at the time. And so even like people like my dad, if they played at a restaurant, it was so Russian influenced at the time that they would have spies sitting in the restaurant making sure that the band is not playing American music. So a bit like Cuba, maybe, you could relate it to that. And if you like playing American music or promote it or teach kids that, then you're like in a sense, you're an enemy. You have to like get punished or whatever it is.
What does that do to you as a musician, and does that make you like American music more?
I think so. I mean, for some reason, and I really don't know why this is, but a group of us, and our family included, and some other kids in the neighborhood, and some other, like my dad had musician friends, like buddies that he hung out all the time with, and drank and rehearsed and played gigs, and it was just like an era, So, but for some reason, American music was always such a part of all this. Like when somebody came home from a cruise ship, like my dad would sneak vinyl in the luggage. He could go to the US to perform on a cruise ship.
Right.
And this was also like 1990 when communism supposed to be gone anyways, and so but still he would like bring some vinyl, and then all these friends come, and then their kids come, and then we listen to so much like Stevie Wonder, Oscar Peterson, George Benson, Weather Report. But I mean, the list goes on, and it's insane how much American music we were able to get. And then obviously, the British, there was a music channel and MTV. Something started to pop up later. Then it all got wild, right? Like you could get access. But people used to bring VHS tapes, and so that's how we would get exposed to jazz. It's like just a blank tape. No one knows what's on it. So you would borrow it or make a copy, and then some people would have big vinyl collection. Then those stereos came along, and then people would make copies onto CDs. But there was always a hunger, and I think part of it had to be because it was forbidden, right?
Yeah. Is there an album or a song or record that you heard under these circumstances that changed your life?
The one, and funny enough, we just talked about VHS. Interestingly, it was 2 live performances. The good part is that you can find them on YouTube now. But it was this VHS that went around in Budapest, and it had the most random mix of jazz. So it would have some black and white Bud Powell trio, but video. Like how lucky. It's still not every day that you can find videos of these people from that era. So Bud Powell, and then it would break into an 80. It was probably that year or the year before, like a 86, 87 Keith Jarrett trio with Gary Peacock and Jack DeJohnette when they toured My Funny Valentine, the Standards Live. So, and then same stage, Pat Metheny with Billy Higgins and Charlie Hayden playing trio. And I remember hearing these different sounds, and when Keith Jarrett played My Funny Valentine. Even the recorded version is like a lot of people's favorite. The intro is so beautiful, but this live version, and it still sounds like crap online, but I mean, even though I think it might have been on a live stage in France, so maybe they recorded it well. I don't know how it was, but by the time it translates to VHS, it had all these like weird effects and sounds. But I just remember going home from school, and it was a thing like when I get home, my dad's gonna be watching some jazz video or whatever. It was fun, that part. So I get home, and I remember really being tired, but just sit on my bed and like in the living room and just watch what they're watching. And it's Keith going into these beautiful melodies, and I just felt something off of that's it felt like freedom. And I think that's what it was, because out of not only that it's jazz, and it was strange. It was not what we grew up on, originally. Like that's not part of the culture as much. But also it's these melodies and the heartfelt playing of Keith Jarrett and Pat Metheny on both of these. And then, we also had VHS tape like Sonny Rollins. And that's rare, like even now that a student at a young age would be listening to those. Right. And especially when it's a live broadcast that only happened in Europe in one time. It's not like a big album or something. And Oscar Peterson too. My dad had vinyl. I guess it was he wanted to make sure that we have good music around. So he had there might have been one that he snuck back, but I mean, Oscar Peterson plus one with Clark Terry. So like I heard Oscar swing and time feel and the blues. So it like out of these things I got exposed to, it's almost like here's a plate of the perfect music that there is up to date. And so that was very fortunate. That's how I...
But when you hear that and you see it, can you just replicate that? Like how do you learn that?
I don't think you can really learn to replicate that. Like you try to feel that way again.
Yeah, but also to play like Oscar.
You know what happens is that when I play the piano, and it's always different, but I feel like that. I don't know if it's me, but I'm better at getting into it easier. There was times when I play and it just doesn't feel. So after a while, I think it would come with age too. But now I don't have to like try to play a certain way. Right. And I think that was a big part of, like that's when I can feel that type of feeling, when it hit me. It's usually when I'm playing and I'm in there is when you feel that type of an inspiration, because I think what happens is I think we're tools. Like I don't think we really come up with any of this shit, I mean, yes, you can learn, right. but like where does that stop? It's like you go back, and the more you go back you realize how much better it's been done already. Like, you go back to Oscar and Art Tatum, or you go back to Horowitz, or like you go back to the big band drummers with Duke Ellington doing magic on stage, dropping sticks up in the air. Like all the Instagram stuff is nothing, right, compared to when that was happening. Or like people like like great dancers who, like even the greatest, like Michael Jackson or James Brown will credit the ones before them. It's like I think it just got to such a high level already, that just trying to play and get into that zone is the most important part of it.
I just don't understand how you just start fiddling on the piano and trying different things becomes who you are today. Do you know what I mean? Like, I had the chance to watch you record a number of tunes at Kerner Hall a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And to watch you, and it was like in a way, because it was improv, that you were making it up on the spot. But somebody would say, can you play this? And you'd say yes, and you would play it. But I just got the sense that if I would have asked you 5 minutes later to play that same song, you'd play it completely different. Yeah. And it was just, everything was about it was in the moment. And
that's
it was
good
just
to hear, because I forgot what I played. No, but I know what you mean. I mean, but that's, I wouldn't think that's an easy thing to do. I think there was a time when I kept feeling more and more personal with the piano again, kind of like going back to when I was a kid.
Right.
But there was a lot of years in between when, let's say like I'm playing and, for like 2 songs, it's like, yeah, that was fun. And it was like in the moment and everything. And then you start playing the other one and it's like, but I think it has to do with who you're playing with. So when you play with people that are easy, it's kind of like riding a great car. Like you don't need to,
but
like autopilot.
I wonder, at what point did you think that you were good enough to do that?
Good enough to...
On the piano to go sit down and just go, okay, my favorite Valentine, and then boom, you're there, and you're trying different things.
I think it has to do, honestly, I think I needed to get to certain things in life to be able to have that like just to be brave enough. Because I remember as a kid, if such and such thought that this pianist is the greatest, and that's not so much, and I thought, oh, that's one of the great musicians in Hungary, let's say, then I would second guess if I want to play that way that night, because I know that guy doesn't like that. As a kid,
right.
I think it's common that you're more like trying to get better, and maybe you think getting better is doing what they're telling you to do because they're great. So I think I needed to play with people like Dave Young and throw in some Oscar licks, and for him to look at me and say, "What are you doing?" And then,
what are you doing? Meaning you shouldn't be doing that? That's not you?
He asked me specifically in a set break while we went up to the bar. I'm probably 20 or 21. And he says, no, he was expressing to me that he likes the way I play, but he was expressing to me, I want to hear a little more Robi. I want to hear a little more Robi. I want to hear more Robi. And because, and that moment I realized it's all cute to be the kid who copies this person or that, because I still like doing that. I still do that to my students. I sit down, I start trying to play like Oscar, trying to play like Bill Evans, trying to show them what the difference is. And it's all great to do that as a young artist, I think. At 20, it was not a bad thing. But right. I was playing with Terry Clark and Dave Young, who put out records with Oscar and played with Oscar. Now, how would I feel if some kid, like let's say I lose a childhood friend who I made music with, and then there's a 20-year-old kid comes in and trying to play the same arrangements and the same, because automatically you want to fit in, but they were going to try to fit in with Oscar too. So if you're on the gig and you're the pianist, so they tried to signal me that message, and I didn't really have that courage yet. And when that happened, I realized, so the realization came that, well, it's all cute to do that, but like playing with them, it's kind of stupid to do that.
But at 20, do you know who Robi is as a piano player? Do you know your sound? Do you know your style?
No, probably not. But I knew I have to be honest about it. And that just kind of told me that if somebody from North America comes to Europe and say I'm a classical musician, then Europe will have a requirement.
Right.
Do you play Mozart? Do you play Bach? Do you play Chopin? And if the answer is, well, that's not I just do my own thing, right? So in that sense, I feel like we have to master, that's never gonna end. I feel like I probably know 5% of what Oscar played on the piano as of now, because the amount of information and the dexterity and there's just so much that will never stop, right? The learning progress and Art Tatum, and these are these are not your regular human beings.
No.
But I think that was an amazing time. And when I opened for Oscar Peterson, due to winning a competition in Montreal.
Okay, before we get to that, because I find that's really interesting. But
sure,
you win a competition. Is this a jazz competition? At one point you decide you want to be a jazz musician as opposed to a classical musician.
Yeah.
Was there ever a time where you thought, maybe I will become a classical pianist?
I was terrible with sticking to the pieces note by note.
Because of your love of improvisation.
Yes, but see, I always feel awkward about that because, it's a different, it's like going to do a gig, and just because it's not jazz, you're not switching to play the right thing, you're gonna make it jazz. So in a way, it was a good way for me to get into improvising, but at the same time, it would have been way more beneficial if I can keep up with my classical studies. But there's the time issue also. I mean, also, I've had a family for a very long time, so raising kids and practicing both classical and jazz and take care of the gigs and go do all this stuff that you need to do. So, but I always, even now, I probably listen to way more classical music than jazz over the years because I love it. I'm very interested in it. I want to play it. I want to play more classical in the future. That's one of my, bucket list.
But do you play it? Do you read perfectly, and is that the way you play classical, or do you do it by ear?
Good question. No, see, classical I wouldn't attempt to lift. I could, but I kind of want to have it's funny, I want to have the sheet music if I get into a piece,
But you can do that. You're quite...
I can read music, yeah. I mean, I had to teach myself how to read because even though I had a few years of music training, lessons in Budapest, because I started improvising and started gigging.
Right.
That was always hey, you got your skills, you got your, arpeggios, keep doing it. But I was already playing tunes. I got really good at just improv. If it was the tunes that I knew, I had a very limited vocabulary and didn't know many tunes. But I was okay going on stage and let's just improvise on that tune. But it was if I listen to anything that I might have from back in the day, it's very limited.
Okay, so you win competitions, one being at Montreux, and that gets you back there to open up for Oscar Peterson.
Right.
But before that, what motivated you to apply or to go into these competitions? Was that a necessary path to what you wanted to achieve?
Well, first of all, I think it was just me hustling, trying to, because it took me so long to stay in Canada to get a status.
Right.
Over 5 years, almost 6.
Okay, you came here in 1989?
And no, 1998.
1998, sorry. So you came here in 1998. I have to ask, what made you decide to come to Canada?
That's a lot of different things. One of the the major things was that I had a relationship and I had a daughter. And so I started the marriage life very early. And at that time, the political situation and both the music and just personal experience, like I was playing nightclubs, not jazz related, really burnt out, like what am I doing? There were like personal things going on. There were like a church that I used to go to was like broke up. They said a lot of things, and one of the major things that really got me to decide that I want to leave at the time was politics. Like just a lot of racism. Again, remember that this was when communism is gone, which means okay, now we have free speech, and give that to that system. Just switch just switch it, and now you can. And so of course, what started to happen is a lot of the American stuff showed up, but it would be like nightclubs and peep shows and skinheads and all these trends and. So racism picked up with that as well, and when I knew I have kids, looking at how the situation politically was at the time, I just didn't want to be the guy who waited 20, 30 years for a change and then the kids suffer
right.
But
I'm okay, so you think I'm going to go to Canada. I don't know if Canada was the first choice, but do you have any sense of you being a musician, what being a musician in Canada would be like?
I felt at the time that it would be better than what I had there. And I also knew I knew about great Canadian artists.
But did you have any direct contact with them to actually know?
No, not really. This was very much like what a 20-year-old would do,
So how difficult was that transition to come here and try to make a name for yourself as a musician in a totally different world?
It was very tough because, again, I arrived here with a family.
Right.
So no English, really, just stuff that I would pick up from pop tunes in English,
right.
And so it was really hard in that sense that we had zero guarantees, right? You just show up. It was strange. It was weird, very different culture, the distances, let's go to the corner store. And, at the time we were in Burlington and it's like the corner store, you get back, you look like, you've been through war in the winter. It's like you're frozen, your earlobes are like, what's happening? So it was very strange in that sense. And with kids and just kind of, that's when it hits you. It's like you came to a different place,
But you said you came here 20, but you also said that you played with Dave Young at 20.
Yeah. So
that's
within about a year, into the next year, actually, crazy stuff happened right at the beginning because when I was just arriving, like I was only here probably for weeks at this point. I would say maybe weeks, maybe a month, maybe a bit over. But one of our social workers, I had a dear friend who also arrived from Hungary around the same time. His name is Robert Horvath, classical pianist. Unfortunately, he passed away since, but he was a very good friend of mine, and that's when we kind of started our friendship here in Canada. And so we had the same social worker who started calling us Jazz Robi and Classical Robi. She was from Hungary, right? So and she took us to a place. She would take us to different venues to try to get us some stuff. And she says, there's a guy who plays jazz at the Sun-Dried Tomatoes in Hamilton, Ontario, and he plays with piano players. He's a bass player. We should go have dinner there. And then So we go there, and it's David Braid, pianist, one of the great Canadian piano players, with this bass player that she was talking about. His name is Henry Strong. He had that gig for years. So Henry would play with a lot of great pianists, you know. So it was a fun setup. And so I would be at the restaurant, and Dave was super nice, and they already talked a bit with this social worker, and it's like, hey, you want to play a song? So I'm only here for weeks. I play a tune that night. I think it was Softly as in the Morning Sunrise or something like that. And then David called me the next day at the motel that I was staying at still. And it's like, he's talking English. I'm like, I didn't understand, but I understand jam session, Toronto. So I'm like, I think he wants me to go to a jam session. So I'm telling my wife at the time to, you know, I think he's gonna come. And he asked me for the address, so I had to look for the business card and says, you know, give him the name of the. But this is before cell phones, right? Really. So then he comes and takes me to the Rex one night. And at the Rex, there's Field Wire, there's like, you know, the list goes on, like just great musicians jamming. And so that kind of put me on the map.
How
Because David would be like, this guy just got here, support him. Then he sends me to do gigs for him. Then he gets me a piano. He rents me a piano to practice on. So David Braid was an amazing person at the time, and to meet him was kind of.
Do you think it's luck, or do you think it was meant to be?
That's a very tough question, because, you know, as I get older now, you know, I feel like you rethink so much.
Mm-hmm.
Especially like when COVID hit, like you kind of rethink your life, you know. And in many ways, you know, I have to acknowledge that in many ways there's been disadvantages of getting through all this, you know, leaving your family, leaving parents behind. You know, your family is not the same if you go through immigration too. Like kids will suffer it, building a new life. There's just so much that at times you're like, you know, you don't want to say everything was meant to be, because, you know, we have the power to rewrite our lives every day.
Right.
I don't think we're the ones making the final decision about it.
True.
But we have so much in our power that if I decided to move to New York, would I not be happier today? I don't know. If I decided to move to LA, one of the main reasons from the switch with kids to come to Canada instead of the US at the time was the social aspect of it. That I knew that, you know, healthcare, it's not a brainer for someone who's young and trying to raise kids somewhere that, you know, at the time for them it was better.
How confident were you of your playing at the age of 20? So you go to the Rex, or you go to this bar in Hamilton, and you sit down and play in front of these people, with people you've never played with before. Are you pretty confident in your abilities as a piano player?
No, I would definitely be. I actually heard really great musicians that night too, so I definitely wasn't too confident in that sense. But yes, in a sense that like I'm here. I gotta do this. I gotta build something. Like I knew that if I come to a country, I can't be waiting for the phone to ring.
Right.
Because no one's gonna call ever. Like it's a blank start, you know, you don't know anyone.
That, and also you don't know the language, so it's pretty amazing. I mean, that's a lot to overcome.
It is.
And then with music, I presume that there is music being a language, that you sit down, and even though you might not be able to speak English, there is a communication between musicians immediately. That even though you can't speak English, you can play with this bass player and make beautiful music together. How long did it take for you to become comfortable speaking English?
I was out a lot. So I had this plan that like anytime there's a jam session in Toronto, I have to be there. At the beginning at least. So I would go to places and that's what I would pick it up. I also went to ESL, but again, that was like a different language. That was like learning a different language, right? Because they would talk slowly and very properly, and then you go to the Rex. It's like, what? So you have to, it's like two different languages, really.
Okay, so you get here. Do you have a goal in mind? Do you know what you want to accomplish musically or in life?
Well, I can't say that I had the long term, definitely, but I just knew that I'm making a lot of sacrifices, and I think a lot of immigrants are like that. That's probably why they work hard, is because you think about what you left there and all the people that kind of you're automatically paying the price. You're not gonna be at that wedding. You might not be there when you lose parents, you lose, it's been in that sense it's been a very rough ride, because if I think back, I lost a lot of people in ways that I couldn't be there. I also, as a musician, you miss time out with your kids. That's crazy, not being there as much. That's already like a lot, But I knew that I have to make noise, otherwise nothing's gonna change. I just knew that I have the ability to create, and maintain relationships. I just knew, and I think that has to do with watching my father as a kid too, because he was never late. He was. He wasn't, he was taking care of business as much as he could at the time.
Right. So, a few years later, you win this competition in Montreux. Does that change your life? I mean, in a way, it seems to have changed a lot. The fact that later on you open up for Oscar Peterson, who is somebody who had admired from afar as a young kid, and to actually play in front of him, and then later on become a friend and establish a relationship with him. I mean, I presume that's the moment that it happened when you won that competition. But what did that winning Montreux Festival mean to you?
Well, I mean, that had to be... Probably it would end up being, if I look back, the biggest highlight. But it's hard to say that.
Oh, yeah, because you've accomplished a lot since then.
Not only that, but if you're talking about another pianist other than Oscar, it could still mean so much to you. But the crazy thing about that was that, I mean, if you had to narrow it down to one and say what's every kid's dream, to who would be the jazz pianist to open for, if there was one, I mean, I think we would all get the same answer. Not in a sense that younger musicians weren't influencing. I mean, I would have freaked out if I can open for Keith Jarrett or Herbie Hancock. But Oscar was a different type of artist. It's like when Oscar played gigs, Dave Young was just telling me, the first row would make up, every great young jazz pianist, including Herbie and Chick Corea, and all these people would be just there trying to see what they can learn. I mean, when Stevie Wonder met Oscar Peterson, he was he looked like he almost collapsed, kissing Oscar's hands.
Right.
It's it's different territory. So Claude Knops, the artistic director of Montreux, called me. You won the competition, so we just wanted to, when they were planning the next year, because I got the first and public prize there. So that included to open for someone. And so he calls me, or I don't know if it was him, it could have been a woman first who called me. and they decided that I'm going to open for Anne Marie. And I said, that's great. You know, I was excited. And then the phone rang back, and it was Claude. And, you know, very thick accent. So I'm trying to, like, you know, but he just keeps saying, you know, I'm thinking Oscar is coming back. This is going to be huge. And you're now from Canada too. I think you should open for Oscar Peterson. So I don't know how he confirmed this. I think him and Oscar were in good enough relationship over the years that Oscar didn't question him, because Oscar didn't really know, like he probably heard my name from Dave Young, maybe, that there's this kid.
Right.
But I don't think he would be able to put all that together. But I'm saying this because he never had an opening act.
Right.
Like, let alone a piano player. Like, I don't know of Oscar having opening acts. I know that Molly Johnson sang a song at one event, and I think it was a similar thing where, like, Oscar was like, cool, let's, you know. But I don't think it was a thing for him, especially pianist, you know.
Yeah.
So it was a super cool thing that I get to. So he calls and says, you know, you gotta open for Oscar. And I mean, I dropped the phone. I was like, I you know, it's like, it's crazy that happens, you know.
But what does that do to somebody who admires this person so much? And now you're in that spot where you know that when you're playing Oscars...
Okay, see, now that's another question, because, like, when I met him on the street in Montreal, I looked at him from the other side of the street as I walk out of my...
So this is before the gig, or...?
This is before.
Okay.
This is the day off, I think. So I walk out of my hotel, and he's there. He was in a wheelchair. And Kelly, his wife, was with him. And I looked at them in a very, like, you know, you could point me out from the crowd, because it was a funny moment. You know, I got froze. Yeah, I was frozen, you know, and then I'm like, oh, I gotta do something, because now she's looking at me, she's smiling. What are you doing? You gotta go say hi. And so I went up to them, and I think I said some funny stuff because I didn't know what to say. I think I just acknowledged that he's Oscar Peterson or something. And he told me, oh, I'm gonna come and check you out. And I remember how terrified I was after that, but excited at the same time. But he came. So he was there just hanging out earlier in the dressing room and, you know, listened to the set. That is
what
insane.
does that do to you? Like, what do you, like, are you very conscious?
I think earlier I mentioned about when that change was, when I found that I gotta be more myself.
Yeah.
So when Dave first asked me to play more of Like Me, this was the time, sitting on stage, knowing Oscar is sitting there. And I'm like, yes, you cannot play something that Oscar plays if you're playing jazz. You have to. Like, it's there. It's part of, he created a lot of that, what it is today, you know, but I started to lose it. I'm like, you know what? When I play the blues, I'll play the blues. When I play a ballad, I'll play Europe. I'll sound like, you know, because that's how I express myself.
Right.
And so in that concert, I had more of that. And at the end, Oscar was extremely nice and complimentary. And one of the things he said, you should keep doing what you're doing. And when I said, oh, thank you, that really means, he's like, no, I really mean it. You should really do your thing.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic.
He says, he expressed that he likes the stuff that I am standing for, because I was getting more honest about my playing. The closer, it was trickier when I was in my teens. I wanted to play in a way that fits more. So, in Budapest, we had like a limited idea of what jazz is. Some people knew it more about it. But when you get to hang with people like that, and or you go and listen to Barry Harris live, and he gives you some advice, or play with certain musicians like that I had the fortune to play with. That's when you start to, okay, I think everybody goes through that. I think you need to be in the, it's like coming to Hungary, saying you're playing Hungarian gypsy music, right, without like, how does that work? Yes, you can hear a lot of stuff on recordings, but you might want to hang out with the people who created that music.
Now, is it correct to assume, like, because you had a relationship with Oscar, a friendship, does it start at that moment, and does it continue from that moment, or does it?
Pretty much, yeah, because his daughter Celine and wife Kelly were there as well. So was Alvin Queen, the drummer at the time, and Dave Young. It was an Ulf Wakenius, the guitarist at the time. And so we all kind of just started a few friendships. And later, Oscar's daughter, Celine, needed a piano teacher. And that's when they reached out and said, maybe through Dave, I'm pretty sure, probably, hey, we need a teacher. And he probably had enough leverage now, say, hey, the kid from Montreux is living right here, So I started coming to the house, and it's just outrageous to say, but give piano lessons to his daughter.
Right, in front of him or in his house.
Oh, yeah. Again, see, it's like stress, and then you find a way. Like that was, I didn't even know how I'm going to get through that. Like, how do you walk into Oscar Peterson's house to give a lesson? Like, that's, like, I mean, I don't know if you can, you could realistically do that.
Teaching is something you still do in a big way. What does teaching do for you?
Well, a few things. I think I learned the most with teaching so far, because you really have to think about what you say,
Right.
How do you describe something, that, how do you take the most important parts out and serve that to a student? Like, you have to research it, otherwise you're not able to do it. So, I learn a lot from teaching. It keeps me engaged with people that have that feeling that I had when I saw those VHS tapes or whatever.
Right.
That hunting thing. If I sense that they're excited, it kind of keeps that alive. That whole. I think that's a beautiful thing about education, that it's like, because of a teacher, kids can be more inspired, and then they're doing something that heals their soul. So, and others who hear it. So it's one of probably the biggest blessings too, if you look at it that way, that you can be part of that. And it also pays my bills.
Right. Was there a point from that man who said, I need to work really hard to make things happen in a new country, and going to every jam session and trying to establish my name, go into different competitions of which you won a few? Was there a point where you thought, not that you've made it, but that you had reached a point where you were quite happy with where you had gone to?
Well, I think if you told me when I was a little kid that I can open for Oscar Peterson, let alone at 20, but at any point, where I can even get encouraging words from him, or, share the stage with, the amount of people and the blessings that I came through. I mean, at the time, if I think back, I made it like 10 times already. You know, if I think about, financial stability, no, I didn't make it yet. If I think about, being in love with music, that's what wins. It's that relationship and just to be able to express yourself. But yeah, I think I also don't really need to be making it. Like I'm not I'm not one of those people that like I only made it if I achieved that.
Right. But
because at the same, honestly, like winning Junos,
yeah,
amazing. I would love to win a Grammy, no question. But then I look at how all that works and the world and the
money
business
and all that,
side of it and all that stuff. It's like, would that mean that like if anything, it would just inspire you to keep working hard, right? So that's why those things. But I don't know if there's a time when you feel like, okay, I made it.
Yeah.
I think what I feel though, because of these achievements and awards, it does feel like that I don't need to prove. Maybe I'll put it that way. Like, not that I made it necessarily, but that I don't have to be, like I understand now what's important. I don't need to, I can be myself. I think it helped me to have more courage and bravery to, I should be making music. I should put out another record. And I think that's what making it means.
Yeah. But I mean, I just think of, it's also having people now come to you with opportunities. And I'm thinking, obviously winning a Juno is one thing, but, you're the jazz artist in residence at RCM, at Royal Conservatory of Music. I mean, that's something. That's obviously... There's some prestige that goes along with that, right?
See, that's another highlight that I would have to say, like in education, when that happened, again, you get another load of making it,
Yeah.
So it's like
But how did that happen?
Well, I would have to say that there's a couple answers to that, actually, because I was at a very, very low place. This was coming out of COVID, and then things are somewhat coming back.
Right.
And I remember saying, because I lost so much touring, for the first time I had like some more solid booking in the US, to have some of my, it was a good place. One couple Junos just before that. This was like a good setup. I was signed to a US label, also Universal Canada, But then all that happened and all of that is gone, including 90% of teaching. So I was like just basically calling people, hey, I can teach on Zoom if you need a lesson. You still studying? Like I had to like build it, from scratch, I felt like. And then I told myself, and I even ended up doing like side jobs and stuff like that. And I told myself, after like 2 years into that whole thing, that if anything, study's gonna come up. Anything, I wasn't sure if it's teaching, but teaching is very likely for musicians like myself. That that's in the picture these days. I mean, most of the people that I can think of that we admire, they teach to some level.
But not everybody who's really good is a good teacher.
True.
Right?
True. But as you see, it's a huge part of, a lot of the musicians that you see actively playing and touring, they also are professors at schools. And so I made a promise to myself that because I was hurting at that point. It's like, I don't know how I'm gonna, like, what's gonna happen with this industry, And so out of nowhere, I got a call. So it was a little bit out of nowhere. In a way, it was an answer to a prayer. But then when you look at how I already did some stuff with RCM in the past, not much, not working, but playing at the hall, meeting a couple of people before there, and mutual friends of Peter Simon, for example, that are on your side. Now thinking back, it's like, but for me, it was like, God, I need something locally so I don't have to be on the road. And even if I want to be on the road, I don't know if that's a thing now.
Right.
So it was just such a, I don't have to explain, it was such a mess, for the entertainment industry that, and it just basically, we started planning on stuff, talking, meeting and everything. Just, I was just really, really, it was one of those highlights that I feel like it was the right thing at the right time, because it also gave me a lot of like inspiration that, wow, okay, there's this thing to work forward, because that there was not many steady things at the time.
Going back to that session, the recording session we did, and once again, you were sitting at the piano, people were suggesting pieces of music, and you were just playing it, and beautifully, like unbelievably. And then you said, well, maybe I should record an album like this one day. When does the next album come out? Like, how does that happen? How do you go about planning the project at this point?
The things are drastically changing with technology. Mm-hmm. And it's a little bit of a gray area, I think, for a lot of artists, because most of us now just go into a space with 2 mics and record something, and a lot of music making is done in a laptop,
right,
without anything. And you could go that way. You could write all this music, and all of a sudden now you need 20 live players. So you second think about. It's not as easy to say, okay, this is exactly what I want to do. But if there's another thing I want to do and it's easy to release, then you pick that project. So I think I'm definitely one of these artists that cannot just put out music for the sake of, it's been a year, let's put out the next record. It's an interesting thing. I actually just saw a video of somebody talking about how some of the, not that I'm comparing myself, but some of the most successful people in the industry didn't put out that much music. Mm-hmm. If you look at, some of the greatest bands have like 5 albums, really, and the rest of it is like compilations and a live thing here or there. And again, I don't want to be like that. I want to put out more music.
Because it's in you, right? Like, are you constantly writing and experimenting and composing?
Yeah, but I have to say that also, it's a mixture of just life and personal stuff and family and teaching and getting back to people and trying to, like, technology. I feel like it helps a lot with, like, easier to do things, but you end up taking more time in a weird way, because now we're all on the phone all the time, and it's just weird. Like, you can get caught up with things. You start one thing and then the notification comes, then you miss out that because I often forget to press send on a text and things like that, because you get so overwhelmed, and so it's harder in those times to be like, you realize the days are gone by and you didn't really sit down and think. So I'm waiting for chances when, like, musically, it's always there. I have new music. I probably have enough music to make an album too. That some of it I already played live a couple of times, but they're not officially recorded yet, and I need to. Like, I want to get them recorded. Another issue becomes that, I'm hearing strings on this. This should have horns, and it's like, okay, you got $100,000, go. So that's another thing, and then you can, of course, apply for grants. You can get some support from labels and this and that, but it's all a big, it's a plan, and I don't think I'm there to really finalize all that plan.
Right.
So I think my next move will be the easier project that I want to do is the solo thing.
Well, having watched that session and to see you play 8 or 10 songs that we did that afternoon, it was brilliant. Now,
thank you.
You know, my musical knowledge is way below your standards, but it was an amazing thing to witness, to see you
I'm
just
so glad.
create. Yeah. And luckily we have videos of it, but yeah, like it was just stunning.
I actually have to investigate, more because I heard the audio, and
which is amazing.
Yeah, and it sounds good too.
Yeah,
They
like
recorded
just, yeah. Puya is just.
It's always tricky for me, to in that sense, like like the fun part about doing it is just I love when you just express yourself, and especially solo, you don't need to translate anything to the drummer and the bass player. You just kind of go with the flow, but it's also tricky because you don't know until you sit in that room and on the piano how everything's gonna be. And then you go to the next place. But I just loved playing on a stage on that particular piano. It was really great because here's the reason why I've been delaying my solo record. And you might think I'm crazy, but I feel like I never had a solo record. I'm also in my 40s now. I kind of feel like a solo record should happen. Now, one thing is that I really want to get my hands going a little bit more because, again, practicing is challenging too because I'm out all day teaching. I'm doing so, But one of the delays is that I could go to a recording studio. I never feel like playing solo in a recording studio. On stage, even then, when we sat there and lights and some crew, not that I can play to 1,000 people, it's fine. But you need some time to get used to that setting. It was a really fortunate setting that day. But part of me thinks if I do a solo concert, because I'm a pianist, it should be a very intimate one. It should be an album where I feel like playing right now, and I'm gonna go and pour my heart into it. Not something that it's all right. Take one, 10 a.m.
Right.
10 a.m. in downtown Toronto. So my plan, crazy enough, is to try to make this recording at home. So, and I also been talking to some people about a upgrade in pianos. So I'm thinking if I time it right, I want to kind of, I feel like I it's my way of doing a solo record is to, when do you sit down at night and do you prefer to listen to music at night or?
No, I don't think I have a preference.
No.
Yeah, but I mean, I can understand that.
So for me, there's something, and it's probably the lifestyle, and everything else. But there's certain, you see, here you're like at a pretty quiet.
Yeah.
I think it has to do with quiet,
Right.
But I often feel like late night is when things starting to, inspiration happens. So I don't want to put this to a frame of 6 hours on the daytime at 10 a.m. with headphones that rip your head off.
Right.
So I'm even with that, which is so simple. Take a mic. These days, you can really record a solo piano album, pretty easily. But see, I want that album to be as honest as possible. And so I think that's the way I'm gonna do it. It's like, sure, if today didn't happen, no problem. Maybe it'll happen in 3 hours the next night. I'll have a full album. But I want to put down the pure inspiration in the moment versus doing these plannings for that. Because solo piano, I feel like I should do it very much, not necessarily in the moment of like not knowing what songs you're gonna do, because I even have a list of songs that I picked, but it just has to happen that way.
Well, as I said, what I witnessed was definitely in the moment, and so I kind of understand what you're saying. But my in the moment is probably different from your in the moment.
No, but imagine if you do that a daily basis for 5 days, and then you go, on Wednesday night, that same song, that's the one I'm gonna take, you know? Because I don't want to even think about it as a recording. I just want to think about whenever the thing hits. You know, it's kind of like having a drink and wanting to hear a song.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to hearing that. For somebody who's had music all around you, and you've gone through the ups and downs of music with COVID and all, but you've accomplished a ridiculous amount of things, including the Junos, including winning competitions. We didn't even talk about your soundtrack work, which you've done some. What does music mean to you? And how has it changed over the years?
Wow. That's a deep question. Well, I mean, music is really right up in the top, you know, for me, because it's the one thing that just, it's always there, you know. I can always go back to it and get something out of it. I can always keep a relationship with music, you know. And it's very, I mean, how many things can you say that about, you know, that it's always there? It never fails you. So it's kind of part of life. It's a 24/7 thing. It's there. Even when I think it's not there, it's there, you know. So it kind of becomes like, it's right up. I mean, obviously, I you know, there's always a level of your children, you know. Some people are religious, so family, you know, you put this first, and you put God first, and second, family second, music third. I mean, that's a good way to say it, but at the same time, like, I couldn't be who I am if I didn't have music. So the whole thing wouldn't work the same way. So it kind of flows through all the parts of life.
Well said. And your playing certainly demonstrates that.
So it's a very important thing, and this is why I think a lot of artists, and I don't want to say artists like me, because that's like a who knows, you know, but I think a lot of artists are going through that. It's like, if you want to be honest about what you do, but you know, this is why it's struggling. It's a struggle for a lot of us, I think, because you want to keep moving with where the music industry is going in order to stay in the industry, right? Like,
right.
But it's in some ways it's becoming harder and harder to keep music priority if you want to success. It's a weird thing.
Yeah.
Because I think, you know, a big change is that a lot of artists way back, they were able to just focus on music and the arts, and there was always someone who's just gonna push for them. There was the old promoter, you know, label, you know, like that's collapsed. That's done. You know, I mean, there's still labels, still promoters that, you know, that are still killing it, and they're around, but it's not the way anymore. And there's a huge upside to social media. I love the fact that you can, you know, if I had that at 9, when I'm lifting Oscar or whatever it is, and I could post, hey, I'm here. It would have been a cool thing to for some reasons, not for all the reasons. It probably, it probably kicked my ass way more that I had to like literally learn that stuff without being able to use all these AI apps that just
for sure.
You slow down to any speed without the key change. It was way rougher, with a cassette tape with the pencil and the, ruining all the tape. And then the key changes. Now you have to learn it a semitone up and then transpose it down. But that's like hard work, right? And you don't even notice it because you just love it so much. But it's harder for people that came up one way and trying to use their knowledge that way if it changes by the time they grow up. And now that speed is not even, you don't even need a generation or 2 decades. Like, from CDs to MP3s or from vinyls. Now it's like we might as well have something totally different in 6 months where people are just going to go there. And that's where the music is going to, like, and it's also, I think there's a lot going on. There's a lot of people doing the same thing and so it's not as, it's just a very different industry.
But does your relationship to music and how you feel about music besides the industry, has that changed at all?
No. I mean, I'm one of the crazy ones who just, but then you look at some of the popular artists bringing back 70s and bringing back 80s and bringing back 90s. So I even heard that like cassette tapes are on the rise. People buy like it's just such a mess in a way, right? But I mean, as long as I think my biggest problem, and most of us, this is where the problem is. Technology is beautiful. It's a beautiful thing in the musical industry. I think it is. Because it like, in that sense, like being able to post, being able to connect with people or play on somebody's album, if you could really not be there in the same room. But when you live in the same town and now you prefer not to make music in person but online, like it just gets so far into that, So I want to stick to real stuff, and you see some people do it. So there's always a percentage. You hear like pop, R&B, hip hop, rap artists that like, wow, they really know their craft and they learn this stuff and they actually play live. But there's been so much, you can manipulate social media so much. You can upload stuff that's so edited and no one thinks it is, and and you get away with not singing it in tune as much. It sucks that people can.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest problem we have with all this is that everybody should keep doing their thing. They will anyways. Apps will come, AI tools will come. It's not stopping. It's gonna get crazy.
Yeah.
But it's gonna be a different world that we like. Just like how MP3s were like revolutionary, I don't think we can even see where this stuff is going. But why not benefit from it if you are the one making the music? So I think the biggest problem is that this will sound harsh, but it's like dealing with gangsters. It's let's do this. We'll take your money. Now you can only sell it through us. If you don't like it, we'll take your music off. It's and then the next company is a little better, but still not great. And if it all started with being fair, no one would, I don't mind if people keep, there's transcriptions, there's sheet music that I have no idea why are you selling sheet music that I wrote and I didn't even have a copy yet? Stuff, like things can happen so quick. and so much stuff can be faked. And now, like, one of the concerns that I have is that, just like, ChatGPT, they have that now for Pro Tools and like plugins, and you can say, give me a reverb like this, play in the style of that person. Just like you say, can you read me a story in the style of this person? Now you can say, can you play me a solo in the style of this person? So it's, if it's gonna go that way, it's like, how will we know what's real and what's not, So I want to belong to the group of people that still don't want to lose the humanity of all of this. But I also wish that there will be more changes in the industry, where artists get compensation. Yes, I almost said something else.
Okay, my final question to you. Tell me what still excites you about music.
Well, I try to listen to stuff that I don't know. Like, it's exciting to find new stuff, and one of the exciting things that keeps coming back to my mind is to be able to, to just keep making more music. That's like, both in the studio when I'm sitting with a laptop and just making all electronic stuff, or in a concert hall, but just to be able to create more music. The hard part is it would be great if I could keep narrowing it down even more, and being able to only focus on projects that are not yet recorded, but they're inside, or they're already demoed, and so I'm hoping to have enough. This is part of why I have that setup I have, is that I decided, and because of different reasons, that I rather be around here, do some teaching. I still want to do gigs in Toronto. I do want to gigs all over, but they just have to be gigs that like
Makes
that connect with me, and also they have to be gigs that worth your while. So that's like a tricky thing between, do I just go and I think a lot of artists, musicians do this. It's like oftentimes they just give up on a lot of club gigs, and let's say I'm just gonna go teach, and then I'll do concert halls, and I kind of started getting into the direction. Nowadays I want to have a little balance of like, yeah, let's do some club stuff, it's fun, but you also don't want to shoot yourself in the foot, because people will come and see you where there's no cover, and then they'll tell you the reason why they didn't see you on the next one, because there was a cover choice. So you want to keep up a standard. I still want to collaborate with a lot of people, so that keeps me excited,
Well, good. I'm looking forward to hearing more of your stuff.
And I would have to also mention that the jazz program at RCM is still unfolding, right? So there's gonna be a lot of things that will be exciting about that too, on the education side of things. So.
Oh, good. Robi, thank you so much for doing this. We've been trying to get this for a while, and I really appreciate you doing this.
Thank you.
I know you're a busy man, so
I'm glad we did. It's very nice of you to connect.
Well, thank you. Or pester would be another word for it. But thank you for doing this.
Thank you.